At this point, you probably have a good idea of which variables can be mapped with imaging spectroscopy data, and how to collect reference data in the field. But here's the big question. How do you link your in-situ data with spectral information? Or, even better, retrieve the desired variables from space without needing to train your model with ground truth data? Well, there are actually quite a number of methods, and they differ depending on the application. In this video, I want to present a very short overview of methods for mapping forest variables from satellite imaging spectroscopy. One of the main areas of interest is the estimation of variables or features of the forest system, and to see how they vary in space and time. Functional forest variables are often continuous in nature and can be grouped into diverse subgroups. We differentiate biophysical traits, for example, leaf area index, forest canopy temperature, average leaf inclination angle, biomass, wood volume. Biochemical traits, for example, leaf chlorophyll content, leaf nitrogen content, leaf water content, gross primary productivity. Phenological traits, for example, start of season or length of season. Geometrical traits, such as the number of trees per area or crown diameters. Before applying any estimation method to imaging spectroscopy data, you should identify which algorithm would be appropriate and applicable for the specific task. The range of potential algorithms is vast, and often the optimal solution is found through trial and error. However, certain algorithms and methodological tools are more commonly used, and we aim to explore some of these frequently employed ones here. We should also consider these aspects before choosing a model. Interpretability. Is our main aim to understand a process? Then choosing an interpretable model is key. If we want to mostly make an accurate estimation or prediction, a more complex black box model may provide better results. Scalability. Do we need to upscale from leaf to canopy level? Is our model able to accomplish this scaling? Processing time. How long does it take to build and test the model? Application time. How long to predict the traits of interest? Accuracy. What accuracy is required? Currently, this research topic is highly dynamic, with new studies exploring new methods every few months, and, in the future, the methodological categories I present here may expand into further subcategories and combinations thereof. For the retrieval of forest traits, we basically differentiate empirical models, physical models, and hybrid methods. Empirical models include parametric as well as non-parametric methods, such as linear regression and non-parametric regression. In our context, physical models refer to radiative transfer models that make use of physically based inversion. And hybrid methods combine non-parametric methods and radiative transfer models. While empirical models are models that can be used for analyzing any types of data, radiative transfer models were specifically developed for analyzing spectral remote sensing data. Another methodological approach, very specific for remote sensing data, that we need to mention here are vegetation indices. Let's look at the subgroups in more detail. We'll start with vegetation indices and parametric regression. If you remember from our previous video, we collected leaf samples while on the crane, and then we process them in the lab. Imagine that you want to relate the chlorophyll content that was measured in the lab to the spectral measurements taken with the field spectrometer, a drone or satellite. We would have numerous spectral bands to relate the chlorophyll measurements to them. To reduce this huge amount of possible solutions, we use vegetation indices. A plethora of indices have been published in the context of optical remote sensing. These indices vary in their mathematical formulations and the number of spectral bands they use. With hyperspectral data, tens of thousands of indices can be systematically tested against reference data to identify those with optimal performance. Some notable examples include NDVI, NDI, and PRI. If you examine this table, you'll notice that these indices can also be categorized into structural indices, pigment indices, xanthophyll indices, RGB indices, and fluorescence indices, according to the wavelength domain that is responsive to these categories via, for example, absorption features. There is an index database containing a huge number of indices for a variety of sensors and applications. You can find the link in the resources section. So how can we now relate a vegetation index without chlorophyll measurements? Imagine you order the calculated index, for example, the NDVI, and the chlorophyll content measurements in a table for different tree species. You can then easily perform a linear regression between the index and the chlorophyll content and receive a result on the relation between the original measurement and the remote sensing variable. This parametric fitting function is a straightforward but often still effective way to retrieve forest information with hyperspectral remote sensing. A more advanced parametric regression is the partial least squares regression, or PLSR. PLSR is special because it is able to compress a large number of highly correlated predictors, such as hyperspectral bands, into a smaller number of uncorrelated predictors, so-called latent variables, which at the same time have a high correlation with the variable you want to predict, in our case, the chlorophyll content. Because of this, PLSR requires relatively small training sample sizes to train a model based on a large number of predictor variables. Other parametric regression models may fail in corresponding situations where you have less reference samples than predictor variables. In our case, spectral bands. This can easily happen with hyperspectral data, which can have several hundred bands. Since PLSR is able to use many bands as input and not just a single vegetation index, you can see here a predicted chlorophyll value derived from hyperspectral information plotted against the actually measured value. Next, the group of non-parametric regressions can be subdivided into non-parametric regressions and machine learning methods. Non-parametric methods directly define regression functions based on information from the data. They do not assume a fixed functional form like a linear or quadratic link between the predictors, in our case spectral bands, and the response, in our case the chlorophyll content. Instead, they find and define the link between the predictors and the response directly from the data. Machine learning methods, such as random forest, RF, and support vector machines, SVM, have especially gained popularity in recent years. These methods can be used for both regression and classification tasks. They are relatively easy to calibrate and generally show good performance. Lately, though, we've seen a huge shift towards neural networks and deep learning in remote sensing for forests. These methods are a game changer, offering accurate results and the power to handle massive complicated datasets, giving us way more detailed insights into forest ecosystems. In terms of physical models, here we will only discuss physically based radiative transfer models, or RTMs for short. RTMs describe the interaction of photons with biophysical and biochemical plant properties by means of physical laws, and can be used to analyze mechanistic principles of spectral and spatial scaling effects. They provide a physically consistent and logical link between the scattering of canopy elements and satellite observations, and can hence help to retrieve forest variables from Earth observation data. They are widely used for variable retrieval by inversion, but also for the development of parametric regressions, generation of training data for non-parametric regressions, and beyond that, for designing new Earth observation missions. In the forward mode, the RTM is built to simulate vegetation reflectance. Afterwards, the model can be used in inverse mode to estimate biophysical and biochemical vegetation properties on the basis of image spectra, measured by the remote sensing sensor. A commonly used RTM in forestry applications is the INFORM model that combines three other models: Prospect, for the leaf scale, a version of SAIL for the homogeneous canopy scale, and FLIM to account for the heterogeneity of forest canopies. Another popular model is DART. Model inversion is needed to derive parameters from measured spectra. The most common inversion strategies are numerical optimization and lookup tables and neural networks. You can learn more about them in the material provided. Finally, hybrid methods refer to a combination of at least two methods that are used synergistically to achieve the objective more efficiently. In forest mapping from Earth observation data, hybrid methods are often referred to as the combination of machine learning methods and RTMs, thus combining the flexibility and scalability of machine learning while incorporating the physics encoded in RTMs. In this course, we want to focus on empirical classification methods, as these are easily available and ready to use even for beginners. You will learn more details in our next video. Okay, let's summarize the method categories. You should now have a basic idea of parametric regression, non-parametric regression, RTM inversion, and hybrid methods.